inductee into the Hall of Fame is Eleanor T.H. Vadala. We have the distinct pleasure today to have with us Debbie Harding. Debbie hails from the great historical state of Pennsylvania. She's a commercial balloon pilot for more than 27 years and a balloon ride operator since 1990. She likes to say that ballooning has become a way of life for her since 1984, while she started crewing and never looked back. She loves sharing every unique flight experience with others. She says it's the perfect job. She started her business with a 90,000 cubic foot balloon that she paid for in part by a credit card and now has a fleet of 5 balloons. She's been the executive director of the annual Chester County Balloon Festival for the past 5 years, a successful 25,000 spectator event with multiple forms of entertainment from food trucks to monster trucks, including the science and sport of ballooning while highlighting the bounty of Chester County, Pennsylvania. She, like Eleanor, is one of today's Hall of Famers, has flown balloons in Europe, additionally taking her own balloons to Kenya, Jamaica, Antigua, and to the North Pole to become one of the first women to ever pilot over the geographic North Pole in 1998. She's flown 5 of the 7 continents and was inspired by balloon mentor Bobby Sparks, who's up on the wall here as well. And she's also played a great role in Eleanor's ballooning story. She still has the goal of flying all 7 continents just for the fun of it. Debbie Harding.
Hello. All right, so public speaker I am not. I'd rather be flying over New York City in a thunderstorm than standing in front of you now, so never let them see you sweat. But anyway, it is, and I saw on the bulletin that I'm supposed to be Bob Sparks and Mike Fairbanks. Sorry about that. Can't follow Bob. He's was a vaudeville act, actually, at one time in his life, and a very funny guy, so no jokes from me. But all right, so it is both an honor and a great privilege to introduce Eleanor Vadala, gas bag balloon pilot, her words, not mine, college grad, material engineer, amateur astrometer, I can't even say that word, community service volunteer into the U.S. Ballooning Hall of Fame. Eleanor, 95 years young, is a vibrant contribution to her family, neighbors, and friends around her, and certainly a quiet force in perpetuating ballooning in the early 50s and 60s as one of very few people flying in the United States. She's the real deal, a role model for women interested in aviation, both as an accomplished balloon pilot, but also as a woman pioneer. So I'm getting teary, but Eleanor has worked her own way through college by becoming Rosie the Riveter of sorts. Her first job was at a local Kellett aircraft manufacturing company on the protection line of putting helicopter and airplane parts together during the World War II, and with amongst her mostly fellow employees. She has some funny stories about that. You have to ask her about them. Going into college in and of itself was quite unusual for that time, and she never did work in her chosen field of nutrition, but she used her knowledge of the sciences to get hired in the astronomy department of the Franklin Institute, one of the first museums in the nation dedicated to the science and technology, to science and technology. It was there that she met Tony Fairbanks, and her life was forever changed when he invited her to become a member of the Balloon Club of America. At the time, he had no balloon. It was just an idea. She jumped at the chance and did so. And she never told her mother about her involvement with the Balloon Club of America until after her first flight in 1954, when her mom spotted her in a newspaper article. Of that, she said her mother became a supporter by feeding the group of flyers to meals after flights, and she also became the lost balloon contact person that they would call if the crew should lose the balloon. From there, Eleanor became the key crew person that was involved in nearly every flight of the club, packing and repacking heavy drag ropes, balloon netting, gluing balloon valves, patching fabric, as well as handling sandbags during inflation, and of course chasing. Because of that, she earned the right of training. She made actually 13 international flights in Europe with Pete Pellegrino and Francis Shields. She shared her experiences after the fact with local kids at schools, and had once planned a gas bag flight from a schoolyard documented by the Philadelphia Inquirer. In that photo is a young woman who is now balloon crew and is still active in the Chester County ballooning. She said that somehow people always found out about her flying balloons, and she was most happy to share. From the Franklin Institute, she got a job working as a civilian material engineer in the Naval Air Development Center located in the Philadelphia Naval Yard. It was under her direction the future of gas balloons used during the war and still held at Lakehurst were deemed unairworthy and destroyed. She was one of a handful of skilled people, and she used the state-of-the-art Instron Tenstal testing machine. Sadly, because these balloons did not pass the test, they were ordered destroyed. It was while working there, too, that she organized and piloted Tony Fairbanks' famous balloon, La Coquette, for a 50th anniversary celebration of the Naval Yard. She said of that, she was honored to be the lady flying the lady. Later in life, Eleanor was part owner in a hot air balloon club. They owned a hot air balloon, had a hand in training Bob Sparks in gas ballooning, and in turn he gave her some flights in hot air balloon. She was also, it's another funny story is Malcolm Forbes was in the area and he asked to become part of their balloon club, and they turned him down. So basically, she says of hot air ballooning, it wasn't her thing. I mean, it was, she loved the gas ballooning. And basically once the group of Pete Pellegrino and Tony and Francis were no more, she did shift and go into other things. She did go on to working back at the Franklin Institute, this time as a volunteer, where at age 64 she met married Ed Bailey, a professional astronomer. After his death, she established a fellowship in his memory at his alma mater, Villanova University. And in fact, during the time of the writing, someone from the Franklin Institute recently reached out to her to ask what her contributions to astronomy that she made while working there with Ed. And of course, of that, she says, I did little, it was all Ed. After her husband's death, she also volunteered as an English teacher to Spanish immigrants. Today, she runs her own household and helps her young neighbor with his schoolwork. In return, he helps her with shoveling snow and weeding the garden. She's been active in the Chester County Balloon Festival 2 years in a row now at our Balloon History Museum, along with Mike Fairbanks and Bob Sparks, also sharing the joy and experiences of gas bag ballooning. Of that, with a big smile, she says, everyone wants to talk about ballooning. She also says that the greatest invention that we've had to ballooning is the door in our baskets. She loves it. So she not only flew with such notables like Tony Fairbanks, Pete Pellegrino, Francis Shields. Her first flight was with Don Picard. She flew in St. Nicholas, Belgium with Alfred Eckert, a noted record-breaking German pilot, and in Swarthmore and Valley Forge with some of the famous Lightfoot pilots from the lighter than air division of Goodyear Tire Company, including Augie O'Neill. I am so honored and privileged to be now calling Eleanor my friend, and I want to thank Mike Fairbanks for introducing me to her, and what a ride you've taken me on, Eleanor. Thank you.
It's my distinct honor and pleasure to induct Eleanor Vadala into the National Ballooning Hall of Fame.
This is a picture of when I was younger. Our young lady over there brought up something of age. It reminded me of my great nephew who asked me, "Aunt Al, did you know George Washington?" He was serious, so I very seriously answered him, "No, only by reputation." I am deeply honored to be initiated into the United States Ballooning Hall of Fame. I asked myself the question over and over again, why? The only reasonable explanation that I could come up with was, well, I was there at the beginning. As has been mentioned, Tony Fairbanks was in the process of forming a balloon club. And true, he did not have any balloons at the time. But the just a little bit of history. The United States government trained balloon pilots primarily for service in the Navy and the Marine service. And one of the requirements was they had to have 8 hours of balloon flight. The training was done at Moffett Field, at the Naval Air Station at Moffett Field in California, and also at the Naval Air Station in Lakehurst, New Jersey. But in the early 50s, the Navy declared all of the balloon paraphernalia as excess material, which opened them to availability for the public. It was there that Tony got 5 balloons and the auxiliary equipment. 2 80,000, 1 35,000, and 2 19s. Just a little bit about the actual ballooning envelopes. They were made of a double bond cotton. The 80,000 weighed pretty close to 1,000 pounds. The 2 smaller ones, considerably lighter, but each one of them weighed at least 400 pounds. So when you're talking gas ballooning in that day, it was very labor intensive. It was also very time consuming. The 80,000 we filled with ordinary cooking gas. I'm sure that's not done today. The lighter, smaller balloons had to be filled with hydrogen. In those days, helium was under the jurisdiction of the Bureau of Mines and was totally unavailable for sale. So, if you wanted to fly and help us you had to get up at 2 a.m. in the morning. We tried to get out to the field because it took at least 4.5 to 5 hours to fill the 80,000 balloons. And, you know, it was a lot of work and a lot of time consuming. In general, there was a quartet that was always present for the filling of the balloons. Tony Fairbanks, Pete Pellegrini, Francis Shields, and Eleanor. One of the things that we learned was wear boots because the dew was usually quite wet in the fields. So anyhow, there we go. But Tony managed to get the balloons in 1952. The balloons were brought by Tony to Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. A small group of the balloon enthusiasts formed got together and signed the Articles of Confirmation in July of 1952. A couple of your Hall of Famers were involved. Don Picard, Anthony Fairbanks. And the others were Francis Shield, Pete Wood, Connie Wolf, and again, Eleanor. The first balloon flight by the group was made in 1952, in June. Again, the pilot there was Don Picard and Anthony Fairbanks, and the two others, John Doerr and Jerry Burns. That was the maiden flight. The first balloon flight that I made was in January of 1954. It was a commemorative flight of the Don Picard. I'll drown. Have to find my thought again. The first balloon flight, my first balloon flight. One of the problems that we had in the first 2 years of flying, we didn't have a permanent inflation site. You know, you don't exactly call up your local gas company and say, would you supply us with 80,000 cubic feet of gas, and we need a wide open space. So we kind of flew here and flew there where we could find somebody, some gas company that would supply the gas and had ample space. That gradually changed. We started flying out of Valley Forge Airport, but that was sold for a golf course. And after that, we had a permanent main put in just for our use in Wings Field. But anyhow, back to my first flight. I had been on the ground crew for 2 years, and it was my turn. So the flight was made from Plymouth Meeting, and as I mentioned, it was a commemorative flight for the Blanchet on January the 9th. It was a very cold, brisk winter day. Inflation began at 10 o'clock. We took off at 2:30. We went 75 air miles in an hour and a half. So we had a brisk wind. And gradually it waned and it began to snow. Well, by this time it was 4 o'clock, and winter days are relatively short. So we started looking for a landing spot. As it happened, we were flying over totally forest areas. You didn't see a house, you saw nothing but trees, trees, trees. But eventually, within our sight, there was a field, a little brisk field, tree lined. So as it happened, the balloon headed straight towards that direction. But now the balloon was just drifting along very slowly because the winds had died down, but it was snowing. And as we came down, the trees were laden with snow. The snow was coming down, and there were deer in the field munching. It was really a very serene, quiet, beautiful sight. We landed, I can't say landed because that doesn't describe it. We kind of just sat down like a huge snowflake. The deer didn't even move. That's how quietly we landed. I never had another landing like that. But eventually somebody in the basket moved. And as one, the deers all flicked their head, and then they were gone with the wind. But it was memorable, you bet it was. I will always remember that the rest of my life. I had the opportunity to balloon in Europe with both each Pete Pellegrino and Francis Shield. I think twice we were the American representative in St. Nicholas, Belgium. The Europeans really were very open-hearted. They greeted us and they treated us wonderful. But it gave us the opportunity because they invited us to balloon in Germany, Belgium, and Switzerland. I want to tell you about the flight in Switzerland. As has been mentioned here, you're starting to use a balloon meister. Well, in Europe, it was old hat. I mean, the balloon meister was in charge of the balloons on the ground. And when I say in charge, I mean in charge. We had been told that there was going to be a ground top. When we arrived in the field, they had already started the inflation. And on the periphery of the balloon, there were roughly, I would guess, 40 to 45 Boy Scouts all in uniform. Well, the fog, I can't say it was a light fog, because you could identify that they were Boy Scouts, but not clearly. But so we looked at one another, and I said, well, they had said that the fog would clear. So we, okay, we'll believe them. Eventually we got in the basket and took off. Well, as we started up, the fog began to get a little thicker. The people on the ground, you couldn't see them. You couldn't see the trees. When we got up to 1,000 feet, all that was beneath us was fog. At 2,000 feet, you looked up, you could only see one half of the envelope. The rest of it was submerged in fog. You looked down, and again you couldn't see the bottom of the basket because it was all in fog. At 3,000 feet, you couldn't see the envelope at all. You couldn't see the ropes. All you saw was the edge of the basket. Well, by this time, we're just looking at one another. We didn't speak to one another. We didn't move. At 4,000 feet, you couldn't see anything of the part, no part of the balloon at all. All you saw were three heads beneath the body. You couldn't see the clothing. There were just three heads. Wow. We looked up, and it was the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. One half of the balloon on the top was in pure blue sky. Beneath was nothing but fog, just thick fog. It was as though someone had taken a knife and sliced right through. Blue sky, fog. Gradually, the whole balloon immersed into the sunshine. I want to tell you, we regained our speech, and we started. We looked up at that golden orb, the sun shining, and say, welcome, welcome, welcome. That was probably my most unique flight. Ballooning, gas ballooning as such, almost ceased with the gas crunch in the 1970s. The gas company, and not only the gas company, but corporations that sold gas would no longer sell gas to us, so that kind of was the demise of the gas bag ballooning. But the knoll of death, the gas bag ballooning, really was the beginning of the revival and extension of hot air ballooning. A word, somebody mentioned gas bag ballooning. I'm a gas bag balloonist by heart. Why? Because in the gas bag, you have not only left the Earth's attraction, you're free flying, but you're flying in complete silence. There's no sound, it's serene, it's calm. Don't misunderstanding. Hot air ballooning is wonderful. You can do it anywhere. You can do it in a backyard. You can do it in an open field. You need very little help, and it doesn't take very long, so it does have a time. Last year when I was at your convention in Philadelphia, I saw something. Debbie has heard me mention this often. You have a door. You can step into the basket. You land, you can open that door and step out. As a senior citizen, I think that's marvelous. But nevertheless, when the hot air balloon started, you know, you don't want to give up ballooning. So I became part of a group of 4 others, and we bought a hot air balloon. And Debbie mentioned Malcolm Ford's. We were ballooning in that area, and Malcolm Ford asked to join us. We had the courage to say no. The rationale being we already had 5 people. We didn't need 6. Well, he had a solution. He just bought his own equipment. And we went out and would help him. But as one balloonist to another, I would ask that you really totally enjoy the fact that you can fly, you're free, you can go, you're riding the winds. You know, that's a wonderful thing. And I would like to also say that I wish each and every balloonist here fair skies, gentle winds, and always, always a safe and happy landing. I would like to express a deep appreciation that I have for being nominated into your Balloon of Fame. And I still do wonder why.